I was reborn. When I opened my eyes, I saw Lin Anyu, fair-skinned and beautiful, curled up in the bed, crying and trembling all over. A glaring spot of red on the quilt made my head buzz and explode. Summer of 1977, Neo Family Bay. I remembered. In my previous life, it was tonight that I drank too much and committed a grave mistake, causing Lin Anyu to jump into a well the next day. My sister Lin Anyu went insane and disappeared in the deep mountains a few years later. My father, overwhelmed with guilt, volunteered to guard the forest farm and was disemboweled by a black bear. My mother couldn't bear the blow, fell ill, and passed away a few years later. Both families were destroyed, all because of me. Later, I left the village, caught the wave of reform and opening up, and became the president of a listed company. Wealthy and powerful, living a glorious life. But this incident in 1977 became my eternal nightmare. When I was critically ill and on my deathbed, I had only one thought. If I could go back to the past, I would do everything in my power to change all of this. Now, God has truly given me this chance. Before I could think more, the door was kicked open. My father, Chen Yang, with graying hair and a face full of wrinkles, rushed in carrying a carrying pole. "You bastard. She's only 18, and you've disgraced the Chen family." The pole slammed hard onto my shoulder, nearly breaking my bones. I didn't dodge. It hurt. It really hurt. But in my heart, it was like fireworks exploding. I really was reborn. Everything can still be undone. Dad, I was wrong. I turned over and got out of bed, fell to my knees with a thud, and banged my head on the ground. In my previous life, it was because I made excuses and avoided responsibility, causing Lin Anyu to suffer a second blow. In this life, I will never repeat that mistake. Chen Yang was stunned. He knew his son too well, usually idle, stealing chickens and dogs. And his biggest flaw was being stubborn, never admitting mistakes even if the sky fell. Now he actually knelt and admitted his mistake? But what use was that? Don't apologize to me. Go apologize to Uncle Lin in the underworld. He raised the pole to strike my head. Uncle Lin was his comrade in arms, who had taken a bullet for him and entrusted his 2 daughters to him before dying. He almost treated the Lin sisters as his own daughters. And now his own son had done such a thing. Today, he truly had murderous intent. I couldn't just die here right after being reborn. I quickly dodged aside. Chen Yang flew into a rage and chased me around the room, hitting me. The commotion grew loud, and my mother, Lu Shufeng, rushed in and directly blocked me. "Chen Yang, you only have one son now. Do you really want to kill him? Such a beast. I'll just pretend I never had him. If you beat him to death, you'll pay with your life. Fine. If you all die, I won't live either. Come on, hit me here." My mother, fiery-tempered, pushed her forehead against the pole. Chen Yang didn't dare hurt her after all, and threw the pole to the ground with a clatter. My mother glared at him fiercely, then turned and walked to the bedside. Seeing Lin Anyu, who had shrunk into the quilt and was crying like a tearful person, she also reddened her eyes. Poor child. She turned her head to look at me, and casually grabbed the dressing box from the head of the bed and threw it at me. I didn't dodge, and with a bang, my head split open, and a warm stream flowed down my forehead. Wow, she hit even harder than my dad. I covered my head and left the room. Chen Yang stood under the ginkgo tree in the yard, puffing on his pipe, his aged face full of dejection. This incident hit him too hard. I walked up to him and knelt again. "Dad, I will take responsibility." "Responsibility?" He raised his eyebrows. "You've ruined an innocent girl. What can you do to take responsibility? I'll marry her and treat her well for the rest of my life." Chen Yang was stunned. He never expected his irresponsible son to say such a thing. But soon he sneered. "You marry her? Pa, dream on. What will you support her with? To marry her, you need at least 200 yuan as a bride price. Who's going to pay that?" 200 yuan, in that era, was equivalent to half a year's salary for an ordinary worker. The Chen family was poor as church mice, 3 generations of poor peasants, barely making ends meet for a family of 5 each month, unable to scrape together a single cent. But I knew in my heart, for me now, 200 yuan was really nothing. Neo Family Bay was backed by the deep mountains of the southwest, full of rare game and precious medicinal herbs. In my previous life, after succeeding in business, I had specifically trained in shooting and wilderness survival. My marksmanship and hunting knowledge were professional grade. In this era when hunting rifles were still allowed, give me a gun, and I could open up a hunting ground. "I'll pay," I said without hesitation. Chen Yang was so angry he rolled his eyes. "The whole family works hard all year and can't earn 200 yuan. You, a good-for-nothing loafer, how can you?" He ignored me, turned and walked into the woodshed, and came out holding a shiny cleaver. "Come in with me and see if Anyu forgives you." If she doesn't, I'll personally send you on your way, and then I'll follow, and we'll go to the Yellow Springs together to apologize to Uncle Lin. The old man was a soldier. Even past 50, his blood and spirit hadn't diminished at all. He really would do it. I took a deep breath and walked into Lin Anyu's room. Lin Anyu was sitting against the wall, wearing an outer garment. Under my mother's comfort, she had stopped crying, but as soon as she saw me, her emotions flared up. "Get out!" She screamed shrilly like a frightened kitten. My mother also glared at me angrily. I looked at the old patched clothes on my mother. The Chen family had been poor for too long. She hadn't worn new clothes for many years. But even so, she was still desperately cleaning up after her erring son, maintaining this family. "Mom, your son is unfilial." I knelt down, tears welling up in my eyes. My mother covered her mouth and nose, trembling as she said, "The one you really should apologize to is Anyu. Apologize properly, don't let us down." I turned to face Lin Anyu. She shrank back into the quilt, trembling all over. "Anyu, I'm sorry. As long as you're willing to give me a chance to make it up, even if I have to give you my life, I will." My mother was anxious, saying I wouldn't be satisfied until I ruined the family. Then she also walked to the bedside and said softly to Lin Anyu, "Anyu, it's Auntie's fault for not teaching Chen Yang well. If you really can't vent your anger, let Annie pay with her life, okay?" The two women cried together in the room. I knelt on the ground, motionless, burying my head deeply in guilt. After a long time, Lin Anyu's crying subsided. She emerged from the quilt, her face streaked with tears, her eyes full of intense hatred. "I don't want anyone's life." Her voice was dead silent. Chen Yuanchao walked in carrying the cleaver. "Anyu, the Chen family owes you. Uncle will seek justice for you now." He walked toward me. My mother lunged at him like crazy to snatch the knife, but he was determined and held it tightly. It looked like someone was really going to die. Lin Anyu finally spoke. "Uncle, let Chen Yang go." Chen Yuanchao was stunned. Lin Anyu stared at me with red eyes. She just didn't want to make the Chen family's elders childless because of herself. She hated me, but not them. But she had already made up her mind. With such a big scene tonight, the whole Niu family Bay would know by tomorrow. An 18-year-old girl, in this era, having lost her chastity, how could she live? Tomorrow, when no one was paying attention, she would find a dry well and jump in, ending it all. So even if I was killed, what difference would it make? Nothing could change. Let Chen Yang get out. I don't want to see him again. She was pale. I straightened up, still kneeling, and said solemnly, "Anyu, marry me. I will treat you well for the rest of my life and make you happy forever." These words came from the bottom of my heart. Decades of guilt from my previous life, and my feelings for her, were all in these words. But Lin Anyu smiled bitterly. "Marry you? Just you? You can't even support yourself. I guarantee that within a week, I'll scrape together 200 yuan for the bride price. And marry you properly and grandly." Her expression wavered for a moment. After losing her chastity, even if she remarried, she would be pointed at and looked down upon for the rest of her life in her husband's family. If she could really marry the one who took her chastity, maybe. But the one saying this was Chen Yang, a good-for-nothing loafer. Why should I believe you? If I can't do it, you don't need to do anything. I'll find a cliff and jump off myself. My mother was terrified and came up to hit my head. Chen Yuanchao's frown deepened more and more. The hand holding the machete tightened again and again. The hatred in Lin Anyu's eyes lessened, replaced by more disgust. "I don't need your promise. Just take care of yourself and don't let your uncle and aunt down. I'll earn 200 yuan. You can marry me or not. I won't force you. But I have one condition." "You dare to make conditions?" Chen Yuanchao raised his foot to kick me, but was firmly stopped by my mother. I remained calm. "My condition is simple. If I earn 200 yuan in a week, you, Lin Anyu, must live well. If you're willing, I'll wait for you to marry me anytime, but I won't force you." After saying this, I turned and walked out of the room, disappearing into the night. Chen Yuanchao and Lu Shufang stood frozen in place. That good-for-nothing son of ours. But those last few words sounded like something a human would say, showing some responsibility. My mother tentatively asked Lin Anyu, "Anyu, do you want to trust him once?" Lin Anyu was silent for a long time, then only said, "I want to wait for my sister to come back." Then she fell onto the bed and said no more. My mother breathed a sigh of relief. Lin Anyu wouldn't be back for 2 more days, so she still had time to do more persuasion. The two elders carefully left the room. The words were out. Now it was time to act. I didn't have a shotgun now, so I had to think of other ways. I glanced at the abandoned chicken coop in the yard, crawled in, and rummaged through a pile of weeds for a long time before finding a slingshot. A long time ago, I used this thing with the young people in the village to go up the mountain to hunt wild chickens and birds for fun. Later, We lost interest and just threw it into the chicken coop. Fortunately, I was pretty good with the slingshot. Taking advantage of the night, he grabbed the slingshot, left the yard, and ran toward the back mountain. Hunting in the middle of the night. That sounds risky, but there was no choice. Only 7 days. To earn 200 yuan, I couldn't afford to slack off. Back to the state of youth. Chen Yang's legs were agile, and his body was full of strength. Walking on the path in the back mountain, he strode briskly, leaving only a vigorous and handsome figure among the forest. More than an hour later, Chen Yang entered the woods of the back mountain. Because it was night, Chen Yang didn't choose to go deep into the forest. Staying on the outskirts could avoid encountering large wild animals. Although it was only the outskirts of the back mountain, there were still many wild animals active. Pheasants, roe deer, and the like to come out at night to forage. It shouldn't be hard to hit a few pheasants with a slingshot. If he was lucky and ran into a masked palm civet, that would be a jackpot. That thing was valuable all over. The meat could be eaten, the fur could be made into clothes, and even the fat could be refined into high-end cosmetics. However, this damn thing was extremely cunning. Although it came out frequently at night, with just the slingshot in Chen Yang's hand, hitting a masked palm civet would be tough. If he had a shotgun, he could give it a try. But then again, Chen Yang was lucky. Tonight, the moonlight was bright. The ridge of the back mountain was illuminated clearly by the moonlight. This allowed him to see many things. For example, in the shrubbery not far away, there were several wings fluttering, accompanied by crisp cooing sounds. Chen Yang grew up in the mountains and had sharp ears. He recognized it as the sound of ring-necked pheasants. In plain terms, wild chickens. But they weren't big. Each one only had about 2 jin of meat. But in that era, 2 jin of meat for an ordinary family was a year's worth of food. Chen Yang remembered clearly. During the Chinese New Year this year, his father bought 2 liang of streaky pork from the supply and marketing cooperative. His mother trimmed off the lean meat, mixed it with leeks and cabbage, and made a pot of dumplings. When you opened a dumpling, you'd see only a tiny bit of meat residue in the green filling. You couldn't taste it unless you ate carefully. There was still 1 liang of fat left, which they couldn't bear to eat, so they rendered it into lard and cracklings. When craving meat, they'd boil a pot of cabbage stock soup and sprinkle a few bits of cracklings, counting it as having meat soup. That's why at the end of that year, when asking someone for a favor, just bringing 2 liang of meat would likely get it done, because everyone had a craving in their belly. Chen Yang sighed at his good luck, encountering pheasants as soon as he arrived. And from the sound, there was more than one. Unfortunately, he only had a slingshot. If he hit one, the others would fly away immediately, and he couldn't get them all. The key was that he couldn't miss. Wild animals were spiritual and very cunning. At the slightest sound, they could disappear in the blink of an eye. So, knowing there were pheasants in the shrubbery, Chen Yang kept his composure. He first crouched low and tiptoed to a position 10 meters from the shrubbery, not daring to make a sound, let alone rashly shoot with the slingshot. Because those pheasants were hiding in the shrubbery, and the shrubs provided protection. Even if the slingshot was accurate, its penetration was poor. The flying stone would easily have its force absorbed by the shrubs. Then, hitting the pheasant would be like a tickle. So, Chen Yang had to think of a way to lure the pheasants out of the shrubbery. He first crouched and observed for a while, then spotted a grove of Elyagnis on his left. Elyagnis can produce a wild fruit called Yongnai fruit, common in the southwestern mountains, and it can be used medicinally. Pheasants love this fruit. However, Yongnai fruit is large and has a tough skin, so generally, pheasants don't bother with it. But there are special cases. By September, the fruit is overripe, and the fragrant juice bursts through the skin, attracting pheasants. These birds use their sharp beaks to peck at the juice of the Yongnai fruit. Chen Yang crouched again and tiptoed to the edge of the Elyagnis grove, picked a few Yongnai fruits, and pinched them with his fingernails. The skin was still hard and tough. Without using clever force, it was really hard to break the skin of the Yongnai fruit. There was plenty of other food in the mountains, so pheasants wouldn't waste effort struggling with this fruit. But Chen Yang had an idea. He moved back to his original position, bit the skin of the Yongnai fruit with his teeth, and pulled hard. The rich juice burst out instantly. But Chen Yang didn't do this to eat the Yongnai fruit. He bit through the skin of several fruits one by one, then aimed at the open space outside the shrubbery and threw them over. Then he waited patiently. Soon, the fragrant juice of the Yongnai fruit was carried by the mountain wind into the shrubbery. Inside the shrubbery, a few loud cooing sounds came out. Then all was quiet. Chen Yang held his breath instantly, staring intently at the shrubbery. After a while, a walnut-sized head poked out from the shrubbery, looking around furtively. Hunting requires not only excellent skill, but also enough patience. Chen Yang knew the pheasant was observing its surroundings. So he crouched in the night, motionless as a mountain, watching the pheasant that had poked its head out. The aroma of the yongnai fruit was truly tempting. After observing for a while and feeling the area was safe, the pheasant cooed a few more times, fluttered out of the shrubbery, stretching and retracting its neck, and slowly walked toward the yongnai fruit. Then, 2 more pheasants came out of the shrubbery. Chen Yang's pupils suddenly widened. He raised the slingshot, pulled it back hard, and aimed at the fattest pheasant in the lead. Whoosh! The stone shot out, cutting through the night air, and hit the pheasant precisely on the neck. Cluck cluck! The bird was startled, jumped in place, and flapped its wings frantically in midair. The 2 pheasants behind were so scared they flew away with a flutter. Poor leader, stunned by the stone, fluttered to the ground after landing, staggered, its legs weak, and could only flap its wings wildly. To be safe, Chen Yang pulled the slingshot fully again and fired several more stones at the pheasant, sending feathers flying everywhere until the pheasant stopped flapping. Then he quickly ran over, grabbed the pheasant's limp neck, and lifted it up. The pheasant didn't move, but it probably wasn't dead. After all, the slingshot in Chen Yang's hand wasn't the kind of powerful bow that could kill a person. To prevent the pheasant from waking up and struggling halfway back, Chen Yang reached out to pull some branches from the shrubbery to tie the pheasant's wings and claws. Rustle, rustle. The branches and leaves of the bushes kept shaking. Chen Yang pulled a very long branch, and when he pulled it to the end, he felt sticky, slippery liquid on the branch. It stuck to his hand and carried a fishy smell. Chen Yang's heart skipped a beat. He had been puzzled about why a few pheasants were hiding in the bushes, flapping and cooing. At first, he thought it was 2 pheasants mating. But just now, 3 pheasants had clearly run out of the bushes. Chen Yang suddenly understood. There must be something in the bushes that attracted the pheasants. Chen Yang checked carefully. The sticky, smelly mucus on the branch was somewhat transparent, like egg liquid. Could it be that the pheasants had laid eggs in the bushes? That didn't seem right. Wild birds are cunning and wouldn't mess around in their own nests. Out of curiosity, Chen Yang parted the bushes. In the moonlight, he saw on the grass in the bushes several white things, the size of fingernails. Leaning in for a closer look, they turned out to be eggshells. But they were very small, like eggs of birds such as pigeons. Chen Yang understood. The pheasants must have discovered these eggs and happily pecked at them. It would have been nice to find bird eggs in the mountains, but unfortunately, these eggs had been pecked empty by the pheasants, leaving only broken shells on the ground. Just as Chen Yang was about to leave, the bush at his feet suddenly moved. Something else? Chen Yang, afraid it might be a snake, quickly stood up and stomped the ground hard. Snakes in the mountains usually stay far away when they hear such noise. Unless it's a mountain viper. If you dare to stomp, it will dare to stand in front of you. Then you can only hope for the best. Chen Yang dared to stomp because he knew that even if it were a snake, it wouldn't be a venomous one, because the movement was right at his feet. If it were a venomous snake, it would have already struck at Chen Yang. He waited for a while, and there was no more movement. Only then did Chen Yang part the bush at his feet. As he did, his eyes widened instantly, and his breathing became heavy. The moonlight was pale. On the grass in the bushes lay a wild bird with gray feathers, a round head, and a slender beak. Why call it a wild bird? Because it was smaller than a pigeon, with more mottled feathers, and it didn't look very good. But Chen Yang recognized it at a glance. It was a turtle dove. This creature wasn't big. At most, it had half a gene of meat. But despite its small size, eating it is good for the eyes, especially for the elderly, and it also has a calming effect. However, this creature usually stays in its nest in the trees at night. So how did it end up in the bushes? The turtle dove at his feet lay motionless on the grass, as if dead. Curious, Chen Yang reached out and poked it. It was indeed dead. He examined it carefully. This turtle dove had lost many feathers, and there were peck marks on its neck. It seemed that the pheasants had been flapping around because of this turtle dove and had pecked it to death. Chen Yang felt he was really lucky. He hadn't expected to come across such a windfall on the first night. Let's stop here for tonight. It will be dawn soon. It was only March or April now. In the deep mountains, the morning temperature was surprisingly low. Chen Yang was wearing only a thin white undershirt, and when the mountain wind blew, goosebumps covered his skin. He definitely didn't dare stay in the mountains until dawn. So he turned around quickly, tied up the plump pheasant tightly with branches, picked up the turtle dove, and went down the mountain. Back at the old home in his memory, he entered the earthen-walled courtyard. Chen Yang first checked his parents' room. Seeing that the light was off, they must have fallen asleep. Then he looked at Lin Anyu's room. The light was also off, with no sound. The whole courtyard was quiet. Chen Yang stood in front of Lin Anyu's door for a while, then sighed softly. Then, in the dark, he went to the kitchen in the southeast corner of the courtyard. The Chen family's kitchen was low and small. Chen Yang, being 1.8 meters tall, had to duck his head to squeeze to the stove. He opened the cabinet above the stove. He found a large porcelain bowl turned upside down in the dish area. Lifting it, he saw a plate of cold fish mint salad. Fish mint is a specialty food in the southwest region. Smelling fishy but tasting delicious. Mixed with chili and sesame oil, it makes a refreshing cold dish. But in those days, this was almost a daily dish for the Chen family. Because this way of eating was spicy enough. Add some vegetable broth and steam a few coarse flour steamed buns, and that was the Chen family's daily meal. There was no oil or meat, only fish mint for flavor. Chen Yang rummaged through the cabinets and only found a small jar of leftover oil residue from the new year, which his mother had carefully placed at the back of the cabinet. Chen Yang felt uneasy. He put down the pheasant and carried the turtle dove into his room. Then he went to the woodpile by the courtyard wall, took some dry firewood, and brought it to the kitchen. In the 1980s, city people already used honeycomb briquettes, but in the countryside, people generally still burned firewood. Chen Yang lit the fire, boiled water, cleaned the pheasant, and decided to cook a pot of pheasant soup before dawn to improve the family's meals. The firewood crackled, and the water in the pot boiled. As the sky began to lighten, in the black pot on the stove, a steaming, fragrant pot of pheasant soup was ready. To make the soup more delicious, Chen Yang also cut up a few white radishes that his father had been drying in the yard and threw them all into the pot. The only drawback was that these white radishes were a bit wilted. There was no choice. His father had planned to pickle them, so they could have a dish to go with the coarse flour steamed buns. But Chen Yang didn't want pickles, nor did he want coarse flour lumps. He wanted to use his own hands to let his family eat well from now on. This pot of pheasant soup was simmered to a fragrant perfection. Even Chen Yang, who was used to delicacies, couldn't help drooling. But he just covered the pot tightly with the lid to prevent the aroma from spreading outside. In those days, if a family in the village ate some meat, it would easily attract envy. Chen Yang understood the principle of keeping one's own things precious. He just wanted to get rich quietly, take good care of his parents, and look after Lin Anyu well, to make up for the regrets of his previous life. So Chen Yang didn't touch the soup. Taking advantage of the dawn, he slipped back into his room, planning to catch a quick nap. Once he was well rested, he would carefully plan his hunting strategy. In Niujiawan, the roosters crowed at dawn. Chen Yuanxiao turned over and got out of bed, ready to start the day's work. The Chen family had 2 mu of land, planted with many sweet potatoes, which needed to be dug up today. His wife, Lu Shufang, also got out of bed. The old couple came to the yard and first glanced at Lin Anyu's room. Seeing no movement, they couldn't tell if she was awake. "Why don't you not go to the fields and spend the next few days with Anyu? She has a strong temper, and we can't let her do anything foolish." Chen Yuanxiao planned to have Lu Shufang stay home. "Can you handle all the work in the fields alone? You're getting old. Do you think you're still a young man in his 20s with endless energy?" Lu Shufang knew they needed to harvest the sweet potatoes today. But 2 mu of land could yield several thousand jin of sweet potatoes. In the past, she and her husband had to work day and night for several days to finish digging up the sweet potatoes. Now, with only Chen Yuanxiao going to the fields, and given his age, he might lose half his life digging up the sweet potatoes. "What can we do? We have a good-for-nothing at home. If I don't go to the fields, who will?" Chen Yuanxiao said with a hint of sulkiness. Lu Shufang couldn't bear to let her husband go to the fields alone. But she also knew that someone had to stay home to watch over Lin Anyu. She subconsciously walked to Chen Yang's room. He heard a faint breathing sound from inside. His son was home. Lu Shufang's brows relaxed slightly. "You're counting on him?" Chen Yuanxiao pointed at Chen Yang's room, lowering his angry voice. "That brat did such a despicable thing last night. Look at him, still sleeping so soundly. You expect this beast to help us bear the responsibility of supporting the family." After saying this, Chen Yuanxiao felt a pang in his chest, feeling that his family was cursed. "Oh, stop it. Let me get you something to eat. You need strength to work." Lu Shufang quickly changed the subject and headed to the kitchen. But Chen Yuanxiao got angry. "Eat. Eat. What's there to eat? Go look at the rice jar. It's about to grow weevils." This was no exaggeration. After the new year this year, Chen Yuanxiao had saved some food stamps, but Chen Yang stole them and exchanged them for money, then lost it all gambling. That's right. Besides being idle, Chen Yang also liked to play cards. But the family was poor, with no money for Chen Yang to gamble. So Chen Yang often stole things from home to exchange for money, then squandered it at the card table. Chen Yuanxiao glanced sideways and suddenly noticed that the radish he had hung in the yard was gone. His eyelids twitched. "Damn it, that brat must have done it again. I'm going to beat that brat to death today." Lu Shufang, who was about to enter the kitchen, stopped and turned around. She saw her husband storming toward their son's room. Chen Yuanchao, stop right there. Lu Shufang immediately ran in front of Chen Yuanchao, grabbed his sleeve, and glared at him. If you use your strength on your son, who's going to work in the fields? Hearing his wife's words, Chen Yuanchao stopped and said grumpily, You just spoil him. What do I spoil him with? Working in the fields is important. I'll come and relieve you in the afternoon. Lu Shufang immediately put her hands on her hips, pointed at Chen Yuanchao's nose, and said angrily, Hurry up and harvest the crops in the field. Take them to the production brigade to exchange for food stamps. We're out of food at home. Hearing that the family was out of food, Chen Yuanchao realized the seriousness of the situation. He sighed. Alas, I calculated that this year's sweet potatoes in the field can be exchanged for 800 jin of food stamps. We still owe old Zhang at the supply and marketing cooperative 200 jin. The rest, at most enough for half a year. Half a year? Don't forget we borrowed 20 ducklings last year. We didn't raise them, so this year we have to return the ducklings. I estimate that the remaining food stamps will last at most 3 months. Lu Shufang gave a bitter laugh. This year, the Chen family was indeed having one disaster after another. After working hard for most of the year, the food they kept was not enough for the whole family. In a few days, Lin Anyu would also come back. Then, with one more mouth to feed, the food stamps probably wouldn't even last 3 months. At this point, the old couple's spirits sank. In the yard, it was quiet, with only Chen Yuanchao's continuous sighs. After a moment, he suddenly spoke. His voice sounded somewhat weary. Maybe I should sign up for the forest protection work. I heard there's a subsidy. Are you crazy? Lu Shufang pushed Chen Yuanchao excitedly. There are black bears in those mountains, and many people have died. Do you want to die there too? I won't let you go. But what? Get out of the way, I'm going to cook. Lu Shufang stormed off to the kitchen. Seeing his wife's angry face, Chen Yuanchao had no choice but to drop the idea of forest protection. He just took out his pipe, feeling restless. But before he could light the tobacco, he heard his wife let out a cry of surprise. Old Chen, come quick. Lu Shufang poked her head out of the kitchen and waved at Chen Yuanchao in panic. What's wrong? Chen Yuanchao quickly put away his pipe and hurried to the kitchen. Lu Shufang grabbed Chen Yuanchao's arm and pointed at the big pot on the stove, asking excitedly, Where did this come from? At this moment, the lid on the big pot had already been lifted by Lu Shufang. A pot of fragrant chicken soup, steaming hot, appeared before Chen Yuanchao's eyes. Chen Yuanchao finally understood why his wife was so excited. He widened his eyes, staring at the chicken in the pot, his eyes almost falling into the soup. Who made this? Chen Yuanchao was also confused. Last night, such a big incident happened to the Chen family. Until midnight, after he and his wife came out of Lin Anyu's room, they went straight back to rest. They definitely didn't have the time or the ingredients to make such a big pot of chicken soup. Chen Yuanchao walked over to the firewood, picked up a colorful feather from the ground, opened his mouth, and looked at Lu Shufang in surprise. Wife, this is a pheasant from the mountains. Did our son bring it? Lu Shufang's mind caught on. Yesterday, after she and her husband came out of Lin Anyu's room, they found that their son had run out. At that time, Lu Shufang wanted to go out and look for him. But it was so dark outside, pitch black, and the Chen family didn't have a flashlight. Chen Yuanchao said that the brat must have hidden somewhere because he had done something wrong, and persuaded his wife to go to sleep. Lu Shufang was finally persuaded by Chen Yuanchao. Now thinking about it, only Chen Yang could have gone out in the middle of the night to catch a pheasant and stew it. Chen Yuanchao looked suspicious, picked up a spoon and scooped into the pot, pulling out a large ladle of chicken. If that kid really stewed the chicken, would he leave us this much meat? Chen Yuanchao clicked his tongue and shook his head. Lu Shufang, on the other hand, looked pleasantly surprised. Maybe our son has become sensible. After what he did last night, he should realize his mistake. Humph, a dog can't change its nature. Can he admit his mistake? Chen Yuanchao put down the ladle. Although he spoke disdainfully of his son, the chicken in the pot was really fragrant. Chen Yuanchao couldn't help but swallow. Lu Shufang knew her husband was stubborn and cared about face, so she quietly took out a bowl and chopsticks and ladled a large bowl of chicken soup for Chen Yuanchao. Our son rarely does something sensible. Eat up, and after you're full, go work quickly. Humph, something of unknown origin. Aren't you afraid of getting a stomachache? Chen Yuanchao didn't take the bowl of chicken soup. He probably believed that the pheasant was brought by his son, possibly as a way to admit his mistake. But the mistake his son made was too serious. If it got out, it would be a hooligan crime, and he would be taken out and shot. A bowl of chicken soup was certainly fragrant, but it couldn't shake Chen Yuanchao's principles. If that brat really wants to repent, let's see if he can earn 200 yuan in a week. After saying that, Chen Yuanxiao turned and strode out of the kitchen. Old stubborn. Lu Shufang rolled her eyes, then stared at the chicken soup in the pot, showing a gratified smile. This was the first time her son had contributed to the family since he was little. As a mother, Lu Shufang felt as sweet as honey. Old Chun, your radish is found. It turned out our son stewed it in the chicken soup. Lu Shufang's eyes curved into a smile as she walked out of the kitchen. Chen Yuanxiao didn't eat the chicken. So Lu Shufang steamed 2 coarse flour buns, dipped them in the chicken soup, and forced them on Chen Yuanxiao. Chen Yuanxiao couldn't refuse, so he ate them hastily and went out to work. There was still a big pot of chicken in the pot. The aroma of the meat, as if thickened, wafted straight into people's noses. Except for the pork dumplings at New Year's, the last time Lu Shufang had meat was half a year ago. At that time, someone in the village got married, cut 5 gene of pork, made a pot of soup, and invited the whole village to drink. On the surface of the soup, there were only a few peppercorn-sized bits of pork, which were not enough for people to eat. It all relied on that layer of oil foam and a little chopped green onion to satisfy the craving. Even so, the aroma of that bowl of soup had lingered in Lu Shufang's memory until now. But compared to the chicken soup her son had made now, it was nothing. In these times, how could face be more important than filling one's stomach? Lu Shufang wasn't as stubborn as Chen Yuanxiao. Knowing it was her son's goodwill, she ladled herself a bowl of chicken soup and ate it with great joy. After eating, Lu Shufang ladled another bowl for her son. She walked to her son's room, knocked gently on the door, and sure enough, there was no response. She guessed that her son had probably gone up the mountain last night and spent the whole night to make this pot of chicken soup, so he must be very tired. So she didn't disturb him, and carrying the chicken soup, she came to Lin Anyu's room. "And you?" Lu Shufang gently knocked on the door. After a moment, there was a response from inside the room. "Auntie, what's the matter?" Lin Anyu's voice was a bit hoarse. Lu Shufang understood at once that the girl had probably been hurt all night and hadn't slept until now. As a fellow woman, Lu Shufang knew that the hurdle in Lin Anyu's heart was not easy to overcome. And because it was her son's fault, Lu Shufang's heart ached. She sighed. "And you? I've made you something to eat. Eat some while it's hot." Lin Anyu didn't respond. Lu Shufang then opened the door and entered the room. Sure enough, Lin Anyu was still sitting on the bed in the same position, her face pale and bloodless. Her eyes were red and swollen, with bloodshot streaks. It looked like she had been crying all night. Seeing Lin Anyu like this, Lu Shufang's nose also tingled. She placed the chicken soup on the table, then walked to the bedside and brushed aside the messy strands of hair on Lin Anyu's forehead. "And you eat something first?" The aroma of the chicken soup had already spread through the air in the room, making one's mouth water. But Lin Anyu had no appetite at all. She looked at the chicken soup on the table, was silent for a moment, and asked, "Auntie, didn't we run out of chickens at home?" "Don't worry about that." Lu Shufang guessed that if she said it was brought by her son, Lin Anyu would probably not accept it. It was as she expected. Seeing Lu Shufang hesitate, Lin Anyu understood immediately. She hadn't slept all night. In the latter half of the night, she heard someone rummaging in the kitchen, thinking it was her uncle or aunt. But then, the person in the kitchen walked toward her room and stopped at the door for a while. Lin Anyu suddenly realized it was Chen Yang. At that moment, she was extremely scared, thinking that this beast wanted to come in and, fortunately, the person outside the door only stayed for a moment, then went back to rummaging in the kitchen. "Come on, while it's hot, drink some chicken soup." "Auntie, I'm not hungry." Lin Anyu turned her head away, not looking at the bowl of chicken soup. Seeing this, Lu Shufang didn't urge her further, but shook her head with a sigh and carried the chicken soup out of Lin Anyu's room. At this time, Chen Yang walked out of his room yawning. There was only 1 week's time. To earn 200 yuan was actually not easy. Wild chickens weren't worth much. If he really wanted to make money by hunting, he'd have to find some rare game. During the day, visibility was good. Chen Yang wanted to try his luck, so he had only slept for 2 hours and was ready to go to the back mountain again. Just then, Lu Shufang, who had come out of Lin Anyu's room, bumped into her son getting up and walked over with the chicken soup. "Go, apologize properly to Anyu." As she spoke, Lu Shufang shoved the bowl into Chen Yang's hands. Chen Yang took one look and understood most of it. "Mom, how is she now?" "How is she?" "Thanks to you. She's still barely alive." Lu Shufang glared at her son angrily. She had originally felt sorry for her son, who had stayed up all night to make a pot of chicken. But just now, seeing Lin Anyu, Lu Shufang felt that her son had brought it upon himself. He had bullied such a good girl like that. This son deserved it. "Your father is right. Don't think you can smooth things over with a pot of chicken. What are you standing there for? Go," urged by Lu Shufang. Chen Yang carried the chicken soup and came to the door of Lin Anyu's room. He knew that Lin Anyu definitely didn't want to see him. but his mother was standing right behind him, staring intently. Under pressure, Chen Yang braced himself and walked into Lin Anyu's room. "Get out!" A scream rang out from the room. Sure enough, when Lin Anyu saw Chen Yang, she was as frightened as if she had seen a ghost, hugging the bedding tightly and shrinking into the corner of the bed. Chen Yang didn't dare look at Lin Anyu, walked to the table, and put down the bowl. Hearing the commotion, Lu Shufang felt uneasy and followed into the room. "Anyu, our family has wronged you, but what's done is done. You should eat something. Don't torment yourself anymore." "Auntie." Seeing Lu Shufang come in, Lin Anyu's eyes reddened. Having stayed in the Chen family for so long, Chen's parents had always taken good care of Lin Anyu. Lin Anyu hated Chen Yang, but she couldn't hate Chen Yang's parents. She was like a wounded little white rabbit, curled up in the corner of the bed trembling, pitiful to behold. Lu Shufang's eyes also reddened. With tears in her eyes, she walked to Lin Anyu's bedside. "Anyu, our Chen family owes you. Even if our whole family has to work like beasts of burden for the rest of our lives, we will willingly take care of you." And Chen Yang also said he would take responsibility for you. As she spoke, Lu Shufang embraced Lin Anyu. "What can he take responsibility with? He's just a good-for-nothing. I'm only 18. Why should I let him ruin me? How can I live the rest of my life?" "Auntie understands." Lu Shufang gently patted Lin Anyu's back. "Cry. It'll feel better once you cry." However, Lin Anyu had cried all night, and her tears were dry. She could only lean against Lu Shufang, sobbing continuously, her frail shoulders trembling. Chen Yang stood nearby, watching his mother and Lin Anyu crying together. He didn't know how to comfort them, nor could he just stand there. He only hated that he had been such a scoundrel back then. He understood that if he hadn't been idle and good-for-nothing back then, Lin Anyu wouldn't have such deep resentment toward him. Now that things had come to this, there was no use saying anything. "Sigh, just try to make up for it." "Mom, I'll go out first." Chen Yang braced himself again and left the room. Coming out of Lin Anyu's room, Chen Yang felt uneasy. In the first half of his life, he had wronged almost everyone around him, so he couldn't waste any more time. He went to the kitchen, planning to knead the remaining coarse flour into steamed buns to fill his stomach, so he'd have the strength to go hunting in the mountains. On the other side, Lu Shufang, who had comforted Lin Anyu, wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes and walked into the kitchen. "Oh, you won't eat the chicken you brought yourself, but you'll eat coarse flour buns? Who are you trying to impress? I was thinking of leaving it for you all to eat." Chen Yang scratched his head. He knew his mother was in a bad mood now, so he didn't dare act up. Lu Shufang rolled her eyes and put the bowl of chicken soup that Lin Anyu hadn't touched, with a thud, on the stove. "Your father doesn't eat it, and I can't eat that much. If you don't eat it, throw it out to feed the dogs." Having said that, Lu Shufang walked out of the kitchen without looking back. Seeing this, Chen Yang didn't want to be pretentious, so he immediately picked up the bowl and ate all the chicken. After eating, without waiting for his mother to do it, Chen Yang took the initiative to clean up the kitchen. There was still a lot of wild chicken left in the pot. Chen Yang found a large basin, poured it all in, and left it for the family to eat at noon. After doing all this, Chen Yang tucked his slingshot into his waistband and called out to Lu Shufang, who was drying corn in the yard. "Mom, I'm going to the back mountain." Lu Shufang was fiddling with the corn in the winnowing basket and didn't pay attention to Chen Yang. Chen Yang then carefully grabbed a handful of corn, put it in his pocket, and also took a bamboo basket to carry on his back. As he was leaving, he dug out a rusty sickle and a small medicinal hoe from the corner of the yard. Speaking of the origin of the medicinal hoe, there was a story behind it. Niu family Bay was too poor. The year before last, the village's survival brigade had a sudden idea and recruited villagers to plant honeysuckle. They said that once it was grown, people from the city would come to buy it, and the price was higher than ordinary crops. When the villagers heard this, they were naturally willing, so every household planted honeysuckle. But when it was time to harvest, some bastard from a neighboring village reported them. Officials came and confiscated all the honeysuckle, and also arrested the production team leader, who still hasn't been released. So, this medicinal hoe had been lying idle in the corner of the Chen family's yard. Chen Yang thought that while hunting in the back mountain, if he came across any herbs, he could dig them up on the spot and take them to the city to sell for money. After throwing the medicinal hoe and sickle into the bamboo basket, under Lu Shufang's curious gaze, Chen Yang left the house and headed straight for the back mountain. The weather was nice today, clear and sunny. In the forest on the back mountain, patches of sunlight filtered down through the leaves. Around, wild birds chirped from time to time. Chen Yang, carrying his bamboo basket, strode briskly toward the depths of the woods. Visibility was good during the day. In the forest, any slight movement could be seen at a glance. So Chen Yang was full of confidence. believing that today's harvest would be even greater than last night's. Take the pheasant, for example. Although it's a wild creature, it's not very smart. It hides in the bushes, but always likes to make some noise. And the key is, this noise is quite distinctive, either cooing or flapping its wings. Sure enough, Chen Yang soon noticed movement in a bush that indicated a pheasant. This time, Chen Yang came prepared. He first placed his basket under a tree, then took out corn kernels from his pants pocket. For pheasants, although these weren't as tasty as sheep's milk fruit, they were still a rare treat. Chen Yang cautiously moved forward a few steps, then, following the same method, scattered the corn kernels on the open ground outside the bushes. After doing all this, he returned to the tree and quietly waited for the pheasant to take the bait. Soon, the pheasant in the bushes was attracted by the corn kernels. It clucked and poked its head out from a pile of weeds. Chen Yang immediately raised his slingshot. When hunting, you must always remain patient. Any wild animal, when faced with food, won't charge straight ahead like livestock. That pheasant was no different. It only poked out its head, looking around with a cluck, unwilling to expose its body easily. But Chen Yang, having lived 2 lives, though only in his early 20s, had already developed a very steady temperament. He held up his slingshot, stubbornly waiting with the pheasant. After a few minutes, the pheasant finally took a step forward, revealing its neck. Perfect timing. Whoosh! The stone shot from the slingshot pierced the air like a bullet, hitting the pheasant precisely on the neck. The pheasant fluttered twice and then fell to the ground. The slingshot in Chen Yang's hand wasn't very powerful, so to ensure he could stun the pheasant, he aimed at its head and neck. The effect was clearly good. Chen Yang immediately pulled some branches from the nearby grass, quickly ran to the bush, tied up the stunned pheasant securely, and threw it into his basket. As always, this pheasant wasn't worth much, but it could serve as food. Chen Yang remained neither proud nor discouraged. Taking advantage of the good weather, he continued deeper into the forest. The back mountain of Niu Family Bay was part of the southwestern mountain range, called Niujiawan Mountain. Niujiawan Mountain covered hundreds of miles, with its main peak shaped like a cow's heart, about 2,000 meters above sea level, rich in various wildlife and plant resources. Besides various wild birds, there were also medium-sized wild animals like mountain antelopes and sun bears. However, for Chen Yang to encounter medium-sized wild animals, he would still need to walk dozens of kilometers into the forest. By then, his slingshot would no longer be enough. He would need at least a homemade shotgun, commonly known as a earth cannon. That thing had a range of about 60 to 70 meters, and only with bullets loaded with iron shot could it penetrate the hide of medium-sized wild animals. Of course, this was only within dozens of kilometers from the outer edge of Niujiawan Mountain. Going deeper, one would easily encounter fierce beasts like clouded leopards, wild boars, and black bears. At that point, the earth cannon would be useless. Professional hunters mostly carried modified Winchester shotguns. The steel balls fired from these could easily break the bones of fierce beasts, making them top-tier hunting weapons. So now, Chen Yang, with only a slingshot, was just playing around, not even close to the threshold of a hunter. He was self-aware. After walking a few hundred meters deeper into the forest, he stopped when he came across a dirt ditch. This ditch was about 7 or 8 meters deep and 2 to 3 meters wide, stretching across the mountainside. Chen Yang estimated that he had already walked about a kilometer into the back mountain. If he crossed the ditch and went deeper, he was afraid of encountering danger. Not to mention wild beasts, the deep mountains in the southwest had a humid, hot, and dry climate, prone to poisonous miasma. In unfamiliar environments, people could easily wander into a miasma zone and be trapped to death. So Chen Yang used this ditch as a boundary, planning his hunting area within the outermost kilometer of the back mountain. In the outer area of the back mountain, encountering valuable wild game was just a matter of luck. Cluck cluck, flap flap. A pheasant flew out from the bushes, fluttered in midair, and then fell headfirst to the ground. A young man with bronze skin, moving with agile steps, emerged from the nearby woods and quickly ran to the pheasant. He pulled a branch, tied up the pheasant in a few quick moves, and grinned, showing a row of white teeth. 2 pheasants, one to stew at home, and the other to trade for some rice and flour. Chen Yang planned. He was lucky. In one morning, he had caught 2 pheasants. At noon, with the sun high, the temperature in the forest rose. Chen Yang wasn't in a hurry to go home. He picked some sheep's milk fruit to eat, planning to try his luck again in the afternoon. But Chen Yang overlooked one thing. Everyone has a beginner's luck period when doing something new. From last night to now, Chen Yang had caught a total of 3 pheasants and 1 small turtle dove. At this point, his beginner's luck had ended. In the afternoon, Chen Yang's luck was extremely poor. He hardly encountered any wild game. Even the pheasants, which were easy to hunt, seemed to have suddenly gained intelligence, sensing human movement from afar and flying into the woods with a flap of their wings. Chen Yang then realized that although the back mountain had abundant wildlife resources, they were mainly concentrated in the deep mountain areas. Only experienced hunters could venture deep into the forest. He was a novice after all, without equipment or experience, and being able to catch a few pheasants in one go was already quite generous of the heavens. But luck always runs out. To earn 200 yuan a week by hunting, he needed to find another way. Otherwise, if hunting were that easy, the villagers of Niu Family Bay would have already become rich. Why else would most people in the village, despite living near Niu Xian Mountain, stick to farming? Whoosh! From the corner of his eye, Chen Yang saw a black shadow flash by. It seemed to be a wild rabbit. It sprang from a nearby bush and darted into the grass on the other side. It moved as fast as lightning. Throughout the morning, Chen Yang had encountered wild rabbits several times. But these creatures ran extremely fast and were even more cunning than pheasants, with long ears that could detect danger. Even a shotgun would have trouble hitting them, let alone a slingshot. So Chen Yang had never considered hunting these long-eared thieves. But having caught nothing all afternoon, he was already feeling a bit frustrated. Seeing a wild rabbit hopping by, almost as if taunting him, Chen Yang couldn't stand it anymore and decided to hunt it. The slingshot wouldn't work, so he had to use a trap. This was also the common method for hunting wild rabbits. Experienced hunters would set up a special trap to catch them. This trap required a rope. The rope was tied into a slip knot in the middle, with a wooden stick propped inside, placed on the grass. The two ends of the rope were tied to two bent branches. The branches were elastic. When pulled by the rope, they generated two opposing forces, tightening the rope from both ends. The wooden stick propped in the middle of the slip knot counteracted these forces. When a rabbit stepped on the stick, the rope would pull, and the slip knot would immediately bind the rabbit's leg tightly. No matter how it struggled, it couldn't escape. This type of trap was usually set in places where rabbits frequented. No bait was needed, and it worked every time. The problem was that Chen Yang didn't have a rope. The rope used for this trap also had its specifics. It was said that old hunters would use fox skin, dried and coated with grass oil, then twisted into a thread as thick as hemp. This kind of leather rope was not only sturdy, but also tough. It was also elastic. Crucially, it was attractive to rabbits. But where could Chen Yang find such a fox fur rope? No way. He could only pull down two thin vines from under the tree, strip the bark, twist the two roots together, and braid a rope. He couldn't guarantee it was sturdy, but it would have to do. For his first rabbit hunt, Chen Yang specifically chose a spot on the shady slope where rabbits often appeared, a prime location for setting his trap. He tied the vine between two citron trees. Then he buried the slip knot in the ground, covering it lightly with fallen leaves. Unless you looked closely, you wouldn't notice anything unusual. In his previous life, Chen Yang was skilled in wilderness survival. The traps he made were not foolproof, but they were at least 90% reliable. But now he wasn't so sure. Wild rabbits have much stronger limbs than domestic ones. And the vine had a weakness. It wasn't very sturdy. Whatever. Man proposes, God disposes. After setting the trap, Chen Yang hid downwind about 10 meters away, under a dirt slope, quietly waiting for a rabbit to come. Wild rabbits have keen senses of smell and hearing. So Chen Yang hid downwind and refused to show himself until he heard movement. It's said that old forests are fertile, and the fertility lies in the soil. On Niujiawan Mountain, there were vast stretches of undeveloped old forest. The vegetation had been growing for countless years, and fallen dead branches and rotting leaves had piled up layer upon layer, turning into rich fertilizer for the soil. In some places, stepping on it made black water ooze out. Such soil produced vegetation with exceptionally lush branches and leaves. In addition, in recent years the state had strengthened forest protection efforts. The forest on Niujiawan Mountain was so dense it was like a barrier, and often you could only hear the sounds of prey but couldn't see them at all. During the hour he waited for a rabbit to take the bait, Chen Yang felt he had been very focused. But it wasn't until he heard a squealing cry that he suddenly snapped to attention and poked his head out to look at the trap. A wild rabbit had somehow gotten caught in his snare, its left hind leg tightly bound by the vine. Damn, when did it come? It really is elusive. Chen Yang couldn't help but admire human ingenuity. If it weren't for traps, these clever rabbits would probably have humans running in circles. But fortunately, his trap had worked. The rabbit, once caught, struggled desperately to push forward. Its forepaws worked like digging machines, sending dirt and leaves flying everywhere. The branches of the two citron trees were even bent by its tugging. The vine binding its ankle made a creaking sound, threatening to snap at any moment. Chen Yang's heart tightened instantly. Without a word, he took out his slingshot. And while the rabbit was still struggling to break free, he aimed at its neck and fired 3 stones in quick succession. This was a risky move. A startled wild animal can unleash an extremely strong will to survive in an instant. So Chen Yang held his breath, without any aiming, relying purely on instinct, and fired 3 stones at lightning speed. Before the rabbit could break free, he had to knock it out. Crack, crack. 2 sounds, one sharp and one dull, came from the trap at the same time. The sharp sound was the vine snapping. The dull sound was a stone hitting the rabbit's head. The slingshot in Chen Yang's hand was not very powerful. At most, it could raise a peanut-sized bump on a person's head. But that was enough. The rabbit couldn't withstand that force. Just as the rabbit snapped the vine, one of the 3 stones Chen Yang had fired struck the rabbit's head hard. The rabbit's body stiffened instantly, and it fell to the ground, knocked out. Chen Yang didn't use branches to tie up the rabbit. Unlike the pheasant, rabbits have sharp teeth and can't be tied up. So he simply picked up a branch of suitable thickness from under a nearby tree, held it in his hand, and walked over to the unconscious rabbit. Without a word, he raised the branch and brought it down hard on the rabbit's head several times. Like domestic rabbits, wild rabbits have many nerve centers at the back of the head. A hard blow there is fatal. After just a few hits, the rabbit stopped breathing. Chen Yang picked it up and weighed it in his hand. Wow, this rabbit weighed 5 or 6 jin, quite fat. It was a good catch. However, catching this one rabbit had taken almost 2 hours in the afternoon. To reset the trap and wait for another rabbit would take at least another 2 hours, and there was no guarantee one would even show up. Considering the time needed to go down the mountain, Chen Yang didn't want to delay any longer. He put his catch for the day into his backpack, then took his sickle and cut some wild vegetables in the forest. And only then did he head down the mountain with the backpack on his back. Oh, isn't that Chen Yang? Is that the idle youngest son of the Chen family? Has he gone mad? Chen Yang came down from the back mountain, unprecedentedly carrying a backpack, a sickle, and a hoe. The villagers passing by were shocked. When had they ever seen Chen Yang like this? One villager walked up to Chen Yang and glanced into the backpack. Chen Yang was prepared and had covered the prey with wild vegetables. Chen Yang, you dug up so many vegetables on the mountain? Yeah, there's no food at home. Chen Yang wiped the sweat from his forehead, a carefree and unrestrained expression on his face. The villager looked as if he had seen something astonishing, staring suspiciously at the backpack. Chen Yang, did you steal something from home again and lose it at the gambling table? No. Who are you kidding? You must have gotten a beating from your old man. Otherwise, why would you honestly go up the mountain to dig wild vegetables? I can't hide it from you. Shoo, keep it down. Chen Yang immediately scratched his head, putting on an embarrassed expression as if he had been found out. Idle people are certainly annoying, but even those who turn over a new leaf aren't necessarily well-liked. After all, when good fortune falls on someone else's family, it's easy to breed jealousy. It's been that way since ancient times. The villager, seeing that Chen Yang was still his usual sloppy self, left satisfied. Chen Yang also returned home with a full harvest. Entering the courtyard, he went into the kitchen and first checked the wild chicken soup in the pot. There wasn't much left. It seemed the family had eaten quite a bit at noon. I wonder if Lin Anyu had any? Chen Yang glanced toward Lin Anyu's room. The door was open, and his mother's figure flashed inside. Seeing this, Chen Yang felt a bit relieved. There was still an hour before dinner. Chen Yang ladled out the chicken soup from the pot, placed it in a basin, and washed the pot. While washing the pot, he saw a string of dried chili peppers hanging on the earthen wall of the kitchen, and an idea struck him. He took out a wild chicken from the backpack, boiled water to remove the feathers, cleaned it, removed the innards, and cut it into pieces. Then he found the rapeseed oil pressed before the new year from the cabinet, only half a bottle left. Chen Yang poured it all into the pot, then gathered firewood and lit the fire. When the oil was hot, he grabbed a handful of dried chilies and threw them into the pot, stir-frying them with scallions and garlic. A spicy, oily aroma immediately burst out, filling every corner of the kitchen. Seizing the moment, Chen Yang poured the cut chicken pieces into the pot and stir-fried them. Soon, the fragrance spread throughout the courtyard. Lu Shufang came out of Lin Anyu's room and walked into the kitchen, her mouth agape in surprise. You little brat, when did you learn to stir-fry? Oh, you got another wild chicken? In Lu Shufang's memory, her son had never been good at kitchen work. But she had to admit, the aroma of the spicy stir-fry was mouth-watering. There's more. Chen Yang kicked the backpack beside him. Lu Shufang quickly crouched down, pushed aside the layer of wild vegetables covering the backpack, and saw a wild chicken and a wild rabbit underneath. Did her son get these from the mountain again? These wild goods aren't easy to come by. Lu Shufang remembered that around this time last year, her husband had gone up the mountain with some villagers to snare wild roe deer. As a result, they squatted for 3 days and 2 nights. A few grown men, besides being bitten all over by mosquitoes, didn't even see a single roe deer hair. After returning, they were scolded by their wives, who said they didn't get to eat any meat but instead went to donate blood. Lu Shufang looked up at her son. His tall figure was squeezed into the small kitchen. His sweat-stained shirt was covered in dirt, and his pant legs were stained with moss. It was clear that he had put in a lot of effort to get these wild goods. Thinking of this, Lu Shufang's nose suddenly felt sour. She could only sigh inwardly, thinking that after last night's incident, it didn't seem to be entirely a bad thing. At least her son had learned a lesson and knew to contribute to the family. But how long would it last? So far, Chen Yang's behavior had indeed pleased Lu Shufang, but she also knew that a leopard can't change its spots. So she still had to question her son's future behavior. Son, have you used up all the cooking oil in the house? Oh, there's still a little bit left, enough to stir-fry another plate of wild vegetables. This pot of chicken is enough to eat. Now that you've used up all the cooking oil, what will we eat tomorrow? And this chicken you stir-fried. Oh my, why did you put so many chili peppers? Chen Yang, do you think you're a landlord? Mom, you go out first. I'll go to town tomorrow to get some seasonings. Chen Yang clattered the spatula loudly to drown out his mother's nagging. Lu Shufang, though she felt sorry for the rapeseed oil and chili peppers, couldn't argue with her son, so she pursed her lips and turned to leave the kitchen. In the evening, Chen Yang brought a plate of spicy diced chicken and a plate of green wild vegetables to the table. Chen Yuanxiao also came back from the fields. As soon as he entered the yard, he smelled a pungent chili aroma. Wife, what's for dinner tonight? Chen Yuanxiao asked casually. Walked to the water vat, scooped up some water with his hand, and washed his face. He had been digging sweet potatoes in the field all day and was starving. People who do heavy labor love chili peppers. The fragrant, spicy smell filled the air, wafting into Chen Yuanxiao's nose and stirring up his cravings. Of course, it's something good. Lu Shufang handed him a towel, with a mysterious expression on her face. In his previous life, after Chen Yang became successful, in order to alleviate his guilt, he spent a lot of effort diverting his attention. Besides practicing marksmanship and learning wilderness skills, Chen Yang also spent some time learning cooking. The dishes he made were delicious and beautifully presented, comparable to a 4-star hotel chef. On the table were a plate of stir-fried wild chicken and a plate of stir-fried wild greens. The aroma of the 2 dishes made Chen Yuanxiao forget to wash his face. He took the towel from his wife, wiped his face hastily, and headed into the house. Seeing the dishes on the table, Chen Yuanxiao swallowed. Chicken, and stir-fried with chili peppers. It didn't look like his wife's cooking. Lu Shufang followed him into the house and met her husband's puzzled gaze. Don't look at me. It was your son who made it. Him? Chen Yuanxiao was stunned, then frowned and asked, where did this brat learn this skill? Where is he now? He's in the room. Lu Shufang gestured with her lips toward Chen Yang's room. After preparing the meal, Chen Yang had carried the basket with the wild chicken and rabbit to his room. The old couple didn't know what Chen Yang was up to. Chen Yuanxiao was more concerned about Lin Anyu's situation, so he asked in a low voice, Anyu, is she okay? Anyu hasn't eaten or drunk anything and has been in her room all day. What has this brat done? Calling you out and make her eat something. A person can't stay hungry forever. Do you think you can call her out? Lu Shufang rolled her eyes, turned to look at Lin Anyu's room, and shook her head helplessly. Chen Yuanxiao walked to the table and sat down, staring at the chicken on the table for a long time. Then took out his old tobacco pipe from his chest, lit it, and took a few puffs. The strong smell of dry tobacco mixed with the aroma of the chicken on the table, intertwining. Just like Chen Yuanxiao's complicated mood at the moment, it filled the room. Chen Yang's behavior last night, hurting Lin Anyu, made Chen Yuanxiao gnash his teeth in anger. But Chen Yang's actions today made Chen Yuanxiao understand that his son was taking some concrete actions to make amends. That was something to be gratified about. But Chen Yuanxiao, like Lu Shufang, worried that his son's change was only temporary and that he might soon revert to his old ways. That's how things are. Once something happens, it's hard to untangle. Chen Yuanxiao took a deep drag on his pipe, smacked his lips, then frowned and tapped the pipe head on the ground a few times to knock out the ashes. Wife, do the villagers know about what that scoundrel did last night? It's all your fault. Last night you made such a big fuss about beating the son, and today a few women came around, asking what happened in our house last night. What did you say? Of course, I only said that Chen Yang lost money, and you taught him a lesson. Dirty laundry shouldn't be aired in public. Hearing his wife's words, Chen Yuanxiao breathed a sigh of relief. He put away his pipe and stared at the dishes on the table for a long time. What's wrong? Don't want to accept your son's kindness? What kindness? Chen Yuanchao's eyes widened. I raised him, so he should make this dish for me. What's with the should or shouldn't? Lu Shufang said irritably. You know, it's not easy to catch wild game. Who knows what hardships your son went through to get this plate of wild chicken? As she said this, a hint of pride hid in the corner of Lu Shufang's eyes. In the years of famine, many people in Niu Family Bay went hunting in the back mountain, but very few caught anything, and a few even went missing in the mountains. So, except for the old hunters in the village, basically no one hunted in the back mountain. With that free time, they'd rather cultivate 2 more acres of land, hoping for a better harvest next year. Lu Shufang suddenly felt that her son was quite capable. Some people went up the mountain last year and fed the mosquitoes for a few days, and what did they get? Stop. Cut it out. Chen Yuanchao was afraid his wife would bring up his embarrassing past. You can argue with anything, but not with food. Especially meat. After all, there was rarely any meat in their diet. Chen Yuanchao decisively picked up his chopsticks and said, All right, this brat does have some skill to bring such a table of dishes. If we don't eat now, it'll get cold. With that, he picked up a piece of chicken and put it in Lu Shufang's bowl. Eat up. Remember to bury the bones in the yard so the neighbors don't find out. Do I need you to tell me that? Lu Shufang rolled her eyes. Chen Yuanchao, feeling snubbed, asked again, Where's Chen Yang? He's already eaten. Before Chen Yuanchao came back, Chen Yang had already had his dinner and hurried back to his room to plan for tomorrow. Now he had a wild chicken, a wild rabbit, and a turtle dove. In March and April, these wild animals have a strong smell, so they need to be processed quickly. He took out the wild chicken and kept it for the family's meals the next day. The rabbit remained in the basket, ready to be taken to town early the next morning to try his luck at selling it for a good price. Around 7 or 8 in the evening, many households in Niu Family Bay had already lit their dim kerosene lamps. In this era, towns and cities already had electric lights. But in a poor mountain village like Niu Family Bay, the villagers still used kerosene lamps or candles. Even so, most people only lit them when they were doing something. They absolutely wouldn't keep the lights on all night. Lu Shufang cleaned up the kitchen, held up a kerosene lamp, and knocked on Chen Yang's door. But after knocking for a while, there was no response from Chen Yang. Listening carefully, she heard faint, even breathing from the room. Lu Shufang guessed that her son had fallen asleep. She turned and walked to the table. Her husband, though he had been dismissive of Chen Yang's cooking, had actually drunk 2 cups of white wine, which was rare. If only my son could always be like this. Under the dim oil lamp, her husband's slightly drunk, flushed face was reflected. Lu Shufang knew her husband had drunk too much, so she didn't reply and went to boil water to prepare for washing up and going to bed. After the turmoil of last night, the Chen family welcomed their first peaceful night. The next day, before dawn, Chen Yang, full of energy after a good sleep, put on his backpack and left home early. To get to the town, he had to walk more than 10 kilometers of mountain roads. Chen Yang jogged all the way, relying on his good physique from his youth, and reached the town in 3 hours. At that time, it was only around 8 or 9 in the morning. But today happened to be a single-number market day, so there were especially many people in the town market. By the time Chen Yang arrived, the market was already packed. Most of the goods sold in the market were ordinary agricultural products, with very little meat. Wild game like hare was definitely a rarity, but under normal circumstances, ordinary people wouldn't buy it, nor could they afford it. However, Chen Yang wasn't worried at all. He stood at the market entrance for a while, then strolled over and stopped in front of a supply and marketing cooperative restaurant on the street. In that era, such restaurants were state-owned and had a high consumption level.